And now, our feature program.
So I'm kind of expecting this video to perform a little better than normal just by virtue of the fact that I'm talking about you-know-what. So hello new viewers, my name is Gavin, this is my social security number, and I'm a bit of a cunt, kind of like a certain rat I'm sure you're familiar with, but I guess I'm getting ahead of myself. So capitalism, right? I'll say it, it's kind of stinky. Not to get too preachy on here because... But whoever first said that it somehow breeds innovation is a big ol' liar, and we need look no further than the big funny megacorporation responsible for such products as The Lion King 1.5 and The Emperor's New School and The Sorcerer's Apprentice for proof of this. Disney has, especially recently, reached a place of such incredible complacency when it comes to their IPs, which is so frustrating to watch, yet no one can stop watching, myself included. As a giant media conglomerate, it can basically just pump out virtually endless content that is so ingrained in our culture that it's impossible to ignore, all for an audience who is always hungry for it. Again, myself included. But in theory, this doesn't really seem that bad to me. Not everything needs to, or even should be, some grand examination of the human condition. I mean, Disney already made The Sorcerer's Apprentice, so how much more kino can it get? There is still absolutely a place for dumb fun. I love dumb fun, however, in practice, this media machine only serves to remove the artistry from the art, and by extension, ruin the relationship between creatives and their audience. What you're left with is just dumb. Not to mention all the exploitative implications that come with this being a system born from capitalism. It's always been a problem, but for the past couple years it's been one that you can't even pretend not to notice. So allow me to take the plunge into this world of modern consumerism and try to pick out what's more damaging to the culture, my cynicism or their capitalism. Spoiler alert, it's both. Both are worse, but it's like they say, you have to fight fire with something that's much less effective than fire. Wait, no, I can think of something better than that. But it's like the US military would say, you have to fight your battles by doing something completely unrelated. In this case, stealing oil and killing unarmed civilians. Goodbye, new viewers. I like Star Wars, probably more than I should, which is why I find it so thoroughly impressive that Disney was able to completely destroy any enthusiasm anyone had for a 40-year-old franchise that has already cemented itself into pop culture in one fell swoop. Like, bravo guys, seriously, you really did the impossible here. I've seen bad movies before, I've seen blatant cash grabs before. Rise of Skywalker might just be the first cowardly movie I've ever seen, and I think cowardly is the best way to describe it. It's a project made for no one and it fails in just about every level it could've. And what's worse is that Disney has this really cool and epic habit of throwing their creatives under the bus the second they smell a critical or financial flop. And look, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that the man who created Lost is some galaxy-brained auteur, but it's clear that every decision regarding the film came from some money-hungry executive, so pinning all of the film's failures on ya boy is kind of unfair. But if any silver lining can be found in this coat hanger abortion of a movie, it's that it gave Star Wars a clean slate. For the first time in a while, the franchise has had something to prove. So, next obvious question, has Star Wars improved since then? I mean, kind of. But it's the one step forward, two steps back kind of improvement that you've probably come to expect from the series at this point. For example, the final season of Clone Wars. If you've seen it, you know that it's some of the best content Star Wars has to offer. Period. Seriously, I could gush about how much I love the final arc for hours, but that only takes up a third of the season. The rest of these episodes range from filler to really unengaging filler to what's essentially a pilot for a different fucking show. So I guess my question is, how do you appraise something like this? Do you focus on the good and see this as a net gain for the franchise? Because the optimist in me wants to just take the bad with the good and appreciate the season as art, but I know it's a lot more complicated than that. The bottom line for any company is money, and for a giant series that spans several decades worth of movies, shows, and games, that means appealing to as many people as possible. And do you know what people like? That thing they recognize. Everything has to tie into everything, not only to sell people on more products, but also to reassure them that nothing will ever really change. After all, change leads to fear, fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, and hate leads to diminishing profit margins. The Clone Wars has to tie into the Bad Batch has to tie into the Mandalorian has to tie into the Book of Boba Fett, and I could keep going. It makes the supposed boundless cosmos that we're told exists seem much, much smaller when important events in the series only ever happen on 4 planets. And I'm not trying to say that there's nothing good about these shows, or even that there's something inherently wrong with cameos. However, Disney seems to be learning all the wrong lessons when it comes to making these. Which brings us to Obi-Wan Kenobi, the fictional character, the Disney Plus original series. I like Obi-Wan, probably more than I should, but I don't really understand what this show is supposed to be. There is absolutely a story to be told with this character at this time in his life, and I guess this is all pretty subjective, but I think they're going about it all wrong. Apparently, the series got rewritten to be more hopeful and uplifting, which I guess was done to fall more in line with Disney's business model of content for all, but let me remind you that this is the part in Kenobi's story where... where is it? Here it is. His entire culture got genocided because his friend was horny. So I think dude has earned the right to be a little sad. I'm totally down for a more introspective, contemplative look at the character, and based off the first couple episodes, it's kind of what it is, but at the same time, making this kind of show goes against the recognizable thing equals standing ovation mindset that has dominated Disney's properties. In terms of a character arc, Obi-Wan has a full picture painted. He can't interact with Maul, he can't really interact with Luke, and he can't even really interact with Vader, even though the entire show is built around these two because their arcs have already been resolved in past releases. It goes back to what I said about Disney learning all the wrong lessons, even to the point where they're giving up on using real actors. That's what you learned from Solo? The lesson you should have learned is maybe I shouldn't make a movie that has no reason to exist, or maybe I shouldn't let this movie get gangbanged by 18 different directors and then act surprised when it has poor direction. Or maybe the audience doesn't need to know that Solo's name is Solo because he was fucking Solo. Earlier this year, Pixar announced the upcoming release of their newest movie, Lightyear, a movie whose announcement was met with a resounding, huh? Like, seriously, if you look past all the right-wing people who are upset that Mr. Home Improvement himself wasn't going to reprise his role as the funny spaceman created for literal children, all of the discourse about this movie came from people confused about what it even is. Like, what am I supposed to do with it? How do I interact with it? Is it the story of a real astronaut that the toy is based on? Are aliens and futuristic space travel canon in the Toy Story universe now? Or is this supposed to be a gritty live-action reboot of that Buzz Lightyear Star Command show that used to be on Disney Channel? Are you telling me that this is the Pixar equivalent of fucking Michael Bay Transformers? Oh, what's that? It's Andy's Star Wars? That's cool and all, but why are we, the audience, watching it? Is it because of brand recognition? Because it feels like it's because of brand recognition. Pixar movies have always been more about big, sweeping themes more than any single character or any mythos attached to a character, and that's exactly why Lightyear feels so corporate and so manufactured to me. Not that this kind of space adventure pastiche doesn't have room for something deeper, but I think I'd prefer something more original. And before anyone tries to argue that I'm punching down at a film that A, hasn't even been released yet, and B, is made for 7-year-olds, please consider the fact that this is the first Pixar movie in recent memory to even get a theatrical release. Yes, some of this is because of COVID, but come on, when was the last time any corporation even acknowledged the pandemic? When I see this, I see a business in need of a surefire hit, and goddammit, they're gonna make one, even if it means annexing projects to Disney Plus that are seen as more of a risk to the company. Not that I'm even the biggest fan of something like Turning Red, but a film that is clearly brimming with passion definitely deserves better than to be deplatformed by a company that has money to burn just because it dared to have an original thought. But hey, maybe this next movie will prove me wrong and Pixar will have yet another classic under their belt. Either way, I can't wait to see how people try to shoehorn this one into the Pixar theory. Marvel, Marvel, Marvel. What are we gonna do about you? Depending on how jaded you are, you might see this as the most offensive example of the creative bankruptcy that I've been talking about, or you might see this as a completely unnecessary footnote to end on because, for all intents and purposes, the MCU is over. Endgame happened, and if you wanted an excuse to stop following these movies, that was it. But once you raise the stakes as high as they can go, what do you do after that? It's clear that the big brains at Marvel Studios had some trouble answering that question because it seems that they've only pretty recently hit their stride in terms of making people excited about the MCU again. Their solution was to get weird with it, and I think for the most part, this works. Marvel has always been pretty good about testing what audiences will accept, so with each release they're able to push further and further. And on paper, a lot of these ideas for their projects are pretty creative. I think it's pretty cool that a D-tier character like Moon Knight is now a household name, but that only happened because of the strict blueprint that every Marvel property has to stick to. There's a certain truth to the statement, if you've seen one, you've seen them all when it comes to the MCU that I feel like a lot of people ignore. There's a reason why the most well-received films are the ones where the director's vision can come through clearly, but even then you can only be so different when the good guys are always going to win against the generic villain using some object of incredible power in a big dumb CGI fight. So excuse me if I don't shove my big dumb CGI thumb up my big dumb CGI ass to gawk at the eye-melting spectacle that I've seen 20 times before. for. Not to mention the fact that the MCU is running pretty low on characters that their audience actually has investment in, so they have to rely on cameos more than any other Disney property. Take No Way Home for example. The idea to have Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield return was obviously the first one that they had, and the rest of the movie has to work around this even if it doesn't really make much sense. And I really don't mean this as a serious criticism. The movie is fun enough in the moment, but I don't know how to feel about the precedent that I think this is setting, especially considering it's now the 6th highest grossing film of all time. I don't know, maybe I'd be able to buy into these kinds of event movies a bit more if the pages of their screenplays weren't all stuck together. Also, the constant output is really starting to hold the MCU back. I really don't want to be that guy, but I have to channel my inner film Twitter for a second because visuals do matter. It's a visual medium. You can't have this budget and be out here looking like Spy Kids. But this is 100% Disney's fault. Crunch is a very real problem in the entertainment industry, and it affects every aspect of the MCU, from the writing to the filming to the VFX work, and all I'm saying is maybe if these projects had a little bit more time in the oven, they'd be better. If this was the case, you could pay your employees fairly for their hard work, and they could sleep soundly knowing that they can now take pride in their finished product. Or at the very least, I'd be spared from having to watch a PS2 render of Saul Goodwoman, attorney at law. So this is the part where I take a stand, right? I finally put my foot down and I say bad corporation, while rapturous applause rains down on me for courageously speaking out against an unjust system. But a couple reasons why I can't do that. The first being, and the second is that it wouldn't matter anyways. These companies control everything, so trying to fight them is honestly pointless. It's like the old saying goes, if you can't beat them, become a Disney adult. Huh. Maybe complacency isn't so bad after all. No. You know what? No. This is a call to action. This has to stop or art will die. Boycott their content. Don't sign petitions because that doesn't fucking work. Grab your local congressman. No, literally, grab your local congressman and throw his ass on the ground a couple times. Let's see how he likes it. Crucify the 1%. Now let's just hope that Disney's lawyers don't catch up with him. Shit. No, come on, look, listen. What? Inciting violence? I said it for the funny. It was a joke. What, you've never heard of satire before?